Hello, welcome back to House of Art. I'm Joanna Robinson. That's the beautiful, luminous Mallory Rubin. Joining us today, it is the man, the icon himself, the atomic bomb of cinematic discourse, Sean Fennessey.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being here for our long-awaited, out-of-order Oppenheimer podcast.
Meta, nonlinear storytelling here on House of R.
Yes, this has been much like the launch of the bomb, rescheduled at least 3 times, but we're going to make it happen today.
Yeah, due to rain and a number of other things. Okay, so we are going to get to a lengthy, healthy discussion and close our Nolan rewatch right after this. All right, program reminders. What do we want to tell folks about what's coming up?
Well, we're continuing to cover Lanterns, a show that we're quite enjoying. So those pods will be dropping on Mondays, those deep dives. You picked Lanterns in the House of R hype draft. Good for you.
Yeah.
The show's great.
Watch the premiere. Enjoyed it.
What'd you think?
Didn't see episode 2.
Okay.
Into it. I will continue to watch it.
Have you ever seen a more handsome person than Hal Jordan in specifically HBO's Lanterns?
I mean, I know he's a longtime paramour of yours.
God.
Yeah,
Dare to dream.
I like the man. Think he's handsome.
Yeah.
You know, I aspire to such rugged but unfussy masculinity. I'll never quite get there, but it'd be nice if I could just put on like a suede jacket.
I kind of like your fussy masculinity.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's
Many people are calling it that.
Yeah, part of the market on it. It's pretty good.
In addition to Lanterns, next week, I believe, the second podcast is Buffy Season 5, Part 1. At long last, we will be resuming our Buffy rewatch. So that's a thrill. That's exciting. Can't wait for that. I've seen Fool for Love, so my life is forever altered.
We did do our look ahead for the rest of the year at the live show in Baltimore.
That's right.
And there's
Fall
a lot of
hype
great
meters
stuff
up.
coming. Wildwood made it very high on my hype list for this fall.
I was invited to a screening and I dropped your name and I said, Joanna Robinson will need to see this film with me. They said, great. I'll let you know about that after the recording.
Okay, I like it. Sean.
Yes. Wait, hold on. We're not going to blow past our trip to Baltimore.
I was about to throw to you.
So I've not spoken to either of you since you traversed the baseball stadium, and one of you threw a first pitch. Yes, you did, and I left you an Instagram comment. But we're going to talk about it in person. Is that what
we've come to? We've known each other for 13 years. God damn it! I left you an Instagram comment.
I knew we would be face to face, and that's how I want to have this conversation.
Okay, tell me.
Okay, I've still only seen the first pitch. From the angle that the Orioles shared on Instagram, which is to say, I did not see home plate.
Yeah.
So how did it go? What happened?
And you know what they told us is they don't usually shoot how it connects, just to keep people guessing.
That's the standard. Though I think that was edited by our beloved Jomi, I think.
Okay.
With taste and care. Unlike Danny Heifetz, who just posted the whole thing on his Instagram. So.
Is that true?
Yes. You can see the Heifetz cut.
Heifetz was an angel throughout the whole night, and then I was like, damn man, you really put me on blast here. The experience was wonderful. The pitch itself. It was. It will be better next time when I'm invited back to do it again.
When would that be?
Next year.
We're campaigning
an annual
hard to make
tradition.
House of Our Night at Oriole Park at Camden Yards an annual tradition. We'll see if anybody on the receiving end of that
they nodded enthusiastically when we mentioned it. I agree. But maybe that was them being like, go home.
There was passion in the room in real time.
Yeah.
I spent, we like to prep here at the podcast. So I would not say that I prepped the way I wanted to, which would have been every day for 6 months. I feel if I had done that, I would have been really dialed in exactly where I needed to be. Because as you know, it's not just about building up arm strength. It's about mechanics, consistency of release point.
Release point, yeah.
It started to practice just like a week and a half, couple weeks before. And it was just enough time to tell me I hadn't left enough time for it.
Yeah.
And when Adam went to the park with me, it was lovely. It was actually really fun. We're like, should we keep playing catch? I'm not going to reveal the park nearest to my home on a public podcast. Okay,
sorry. Wow.
I've
didn't realize you were such a star. I know you're throwing out first pitches.
I'll wait till I post the behind-the-scenes photos on Instagram, and then people can very easily identify it if they care. Right next to your comments.
We should create a Ringer-esque Gawker Stalker, but just for parks.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea because we're all famously out and about. Yeah.
Well, those of us with children have to go all the time, unfortunately.
Yes, please put your children on a Gawker Stalker.
Sean and Bill and I learned on the About Last Night rewatchables just mere days ago that there is apparently a robust, thriving, booming Ringer intramural sports experience that none of us have been invited to participate in. They've had a basketball team.
Oh, yeah,
a
I know
soccer
about this.
team.
Yeah.
Have you been invited to play?
No. Why would anybody invite me? I'm not fun. Why would anybody invite me to do anything?
I thought you were going to say you're not athletic.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the fussy masculinity is the energy you want to bring to intramural sports.
I think you'd be
great. For years, I did play on the intramural basketball team here at the Ringer, and then I retired.
I remember the back pain, the lower back pain.
It was very hard on my body.
Well. That was a tough moment.
Playing with 25-year-olds was a mistake.
My back also hurts. But that's just also because I'm getting old. So the quick answer to how did the actual pitch go? I was very worried as Joe and all of the bad babies who joined us at this wonderful event at Oriole Park at Camden Yards because we did the pregame live pod at the warehouse.
Yes.
Incredible experience. We went down on the field. We got to take pictures. Incredible experience. Did the pitch. Incredible experience. You know Steve Beslow, my dear friend.
Yes.
I could hear the bad babies cheering. I knew Adam had sort of vowed to take my parents into a place where they would be able to see both the field and the Jumbotron. And Joe was right there on the field. But I wasn't expecting. I turned around and my beloved Steve, one of my best friends in the world, had made his way down behind home plate and was right there. And I got all weepy. And it was just very wonderful and emotional and surreal and great. Got out there. I'd been really nervous in the run-up because every time Adam and I went to practice, the first throw, no matter how many times we did it, not enough times, but no matter how many times, always a spike 10 feet in front of me to the left every time because I was trying for extra distance and would, So I'm like, all right, don't spike the ball. I told the room at the live pod, and you get a couple warm-up throws in, you're fine, but the first throw, always a mess. I overcompensated, released early and still because I was so anxious about holding late. But I cleared had the distance to reach the plate. And that was to me was the most important thing. Didn't spike it, didn't come up short, but wide right.
Yeah,
wide right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if it were a right-handed hitter,
it would have been behind him, and they would have thought that I tried to hit him in the spine, but missed.
Okay.
She did connect on all of her warm.
I
did. I
requested to warm up on the sideline before,
and
I saw that.
I don't want to say this then, but I had a sinking feeling because the rule of show business is if your dress rehearsal is great,
sure,
actual performance will be bad.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, she's hitting all of these.
It was close enough to it. You got to try to get the arm a little limber. It was a very humid day. There were storms. There was a tornado warning.
Were you nervous for her beforehand?
No, I was just excited for her because
incredibly supportive.
Mallory had laid enough track that she was
just
like,
are so beautiful.
Well, Mallory was just sort of
we have a very deep and meaningful bond.
She was like, I'm just going to spike it. She was really prepared to just spike it into the dirt.
The spike felt to me
so
like
she wasn't
a guarantee.
Nervous about whether or not she was going to make it. She had come up with a whole routine of what she was going to do.
Yeah. Shook off the catcher twice.
Yeah.
Then, did
her little challenge.
Well, I saw you immediately called for ABS.
Yeah. She plotted that.
I saw that.
Did your hop over the foul line.
Did the hop over the thanks. Yeah. A CR-approved bit, which is how I knew it was worth trying.
So I knew she had a whole routine plan, and I was I just got emotional.
You did. It was incredibly sweet.
When she was walked out there.
And then I walked into your arms.
And they said her name over the announcer, and you could see her on the Jumbotron.
Yeah. They said my high school. It was really fun.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was
great.
It was really sweet.
It was lovely.
And Jomi and I were just sitting there, and I just started crying. It was really, really sweet.
It was really wonderful. It was a very cool day for my family. They were super hyped. My dad was just over the moon. Also, Joe got to meet my family. She got to meet some of my best friends. It was amazing. And then because people who had bought tickets, this was a really cool event. People who had bought tickets to the live show, we all had a dedicated section in center field. So we spent the whole game meeting the listeners, meeting the viewers and hanging out with them. I didn't see a pitch of the game. The Orioles got their asses kicked, lamentably, by the Yankees. However, they bounced back and then took the next couple from the race. So,
did they?
Yeah, they did.
Why didn't you see a pitch of the game?
Because we were just hanging with the bad babies the whole time. We were just,
wow.
we were in a throng of the bad baby community out in the wild. It's a wonderful thing to get to experience. And then people are making line friends. They're meeting each other. It's fun for us to meet them, but fun to watch them meet each other. It's just a delight.
Yeah,
it's great.
Sure.
It was a wonderful experience. And we're looking forward to House of Our Night at Camden Yards in 2027.
And you were interviewed by Kevin Brown.
Yeah. So,
and he hopped on the podcast too.
No
he
kidding.
hopped on at the very end.
It sounded like he fangirled out a little bit.
Well, Kevin is a big fan of The Ringer. Yeah. He's a fan of House of R. He's a Sean Fennessey and Big Pick super fan.
Nice.
And so while I would consider
he's great.
Kevin,
he's super talented.
He's amazing. While I would consider Kevin an actual genuine friend, one of my dear friends, someone I adore, I know that our friendship is just a plot to get to you eventually, okay. And I'm okay with it.
I'm available.
His dream in life is to participate in a big picture movie draft.
Wow.
His dream in life.
Baltimore movies, are there enough?
I've been plotting a baseball movie
the
draft.
Other Hairspray?
Let's do it. I'm inviting myself as well.
Well, you were on the list. You were on the invitation list.
Bull Durham number 1.
Me too. Like number
no
one
spoilers.
on the
Well, now that you're all in,
baseball movie.
I do love baseball.
Are you adopting the Orioles? Have you considered that?
She has a custom jersey now.
I do, and
I think I saw that.
Here's my hope is that if we make this an annual tradition, we get to start collecting because they put 26 on the back for the year. Then we get 27, 28, just like collect one every year.
Wow.
We need to be invited on a City Connect night so that we can get the custom City Connects. The O's City Connect this year, it's just fucking
I'm not familiar with
amazing.
them, but I reject City Connect on the premise. I'm just not a fan.
I mean, I've seen the Met City Connect, so I bet.
They're pretty rough. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Why didn't you respond to my text where I sent you Pete Alonso's Player Weekend bat, which had a Maryland crab, blue crab, and it was all about the Eastern Shore and being in love with Maryland and Baltimore and this new community. I sent it to you. You did not reply.
Well, my enthusiasm for your experience only extends so far. I'm happy you had this wonderful day, that you got to experience it with Joanna, that your family got to be there.
Yeah.
Pete Alonso was a member of my family for many years.
That's right.
There were a couple people in Mets gear.
And I was like, why are you wearing Mets gear?
And then I heard about the whole Pete thing.
Pete.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not Pete's fault.
No, he's wonderful.
He should have been
retained.
retained.
I just heard that it might be a note of sensitivity among Mets fans.
I do feel bad for Mets fans. I feel happy to have Pete in my life. He's wonderful and he has 30 home runs. It's great.
I mean, the main point is
that's what he does every year.
The main point is that I understood your Instagram comment when you left it.
There you go. Yeah.
I know.
Now you're in the loop on baseball.
Pete did not embrace me to answer your Instagram question, but he's embraced the city of Baltimore and the state of Maryland, and then his wife threw out the pitch a couple days later.
No kidding.
He caught that.
She seems like a nice gal too. What's her name?
Wonderful family.
Kelsey?
That's something like that.
Member
Jenna?
of your family, but you don't know the wife?
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, man. Great
Speaking
stuff.
of great men and their wives that are also here, let's talk about Oppenheimer. Spoiler for history, I suppose.
Indeed.
This is the last of our Nolan movies, so all Nolan movies are on the table, including The Odyssey, which we have all seen. I would say if we want to make reference to The Odyssey and you haven't seen The Odyssey yet, you should know the story of The Odyssey, but we might talk about it. This film was directed and written by Christopher Nolan, came out July 21st, 2023. Budget, $100 million. Worldwide box office, $976.7 million, nearly $1 billion. An incredible, outrageous achievement, a pile of Oscars. Just the film of that year, undoubtedly.
She said with some resignation.
No, you know what? And I told you this already. Every time I rewatch this movie, I like it more.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
You say it like I'm doing it for you. That's what you said last time.
I'm on this movie's corner. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
When will you show the same grace to Inception,
I've certainly given it a lot of looks.
Yeah.
I've tried to evolve my thoughts.
Because we were supposed to do this a while ago, I did all my prep then. And then I rewatched it a couple times the last 2 days also to remind myself because my memory's bad. And again, every single time I rewatch it, I admire it more. I think there is a lot. There's obviously so much going on here, but it is it's an undeniable achievement. And it is so rich with ideas and, like intellectually dense that every time I watch it, I discover something else. And every time I read an in-depth essay about it, I enjoy that experience. But I think I do still admire it more than I love it because I don't feel sort of like emotionally moved by it. I feel intellectually stimulated by it. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's just sort of where I land with it. Sean Fennessey. Tell me about your love of Oppenheimer.
I think that's a completely reasonable opinion, and I wouldn't want to take it away from anybody. I don't.
Well, you can't.
I'm not. Well, I mean, don't dare me. I think
they'll listen to a prophet.
It's interesting that you frame it that way because I don't know that I really have thought about the film in that dynamic. Though that's a very common dynamic that people have with movies, which is sort of like, did this movie work for me personally on an emotional level? And also, is it successful in what it is attempting to try to do? I don't find Chris Nolan to be a terribly emotional filmmaker. I would say The Odyssey is a pretty big breakthrough in that respect for me with his movies. I find him to be extremely structurally interesting. I think he's capable of great depth and imagination, but I find a lot of the emotional mechanics of his movies to be like a little tight and British. And so this movie to me is a kind of a fascinating breakthrough in that I feel like he's really trying to reckon with something that has recurred in all of his movies, and he kind of breaks through on that thing, which is this idea of sort of like, we spend so much time figuring out if we could, we didn't think to ask if we should.
Yeah.
And that's a hard line through all the movies. It's
The Prestige. That's what it's about.
The Prestige is about that. I mean, Following is about that. This guy who sort of stumbles into a world of intrigue and doesn't really think about the consequences of that. Memento is about the inability to see what the consequences of your actions are because of something that is sort of blocking your ability to see it.
Yeah. Insomnia, should we get room darkening shades?
Exactly. All of these but specifically, like, I can't sleep. I'm not able to sleep, and it is causing my mind,
trust your own mind
to worry.
Like digging, you quoted Jurassic Park, love to see it. Digging too greedily and too deep. That's like what a lot of his stuff is about. Mallory, what was your journey through these rewatches of Oppenheimer, and anything you want to weigh in on that sort of like emotional versus, we've talked about this, about like the chilliness of Nolan for some people. Where do you land on that after this Oppenheimer revisitation?
Yeah, I mean, I love the filmography. I love Nolan's movies, as we've talked about now over the course of a year plus, which has been such a joy, to go through slowly and non-sequentially out of order. All of his movies. And it's fun because it started very authentically with like the Batman Begins and Inception anniversaries last year. And there's the idea of like, then we'll do the Prestige because we want to, and should we keep going? And it has felt weirdly meta and apt, albeit genuinely unintentional, to take them in this order and in this way. And I think, Joe, this was maybe how we justified it to ourselves in real time, but it actually does feel kind of nice to look back at Oppenheimer after the Odyssey, given what a massive achievement and culmination, of so many of those core areas of emphasis, the focus and through lines across the entire filmography, the Odyssey felt like. And to then study Oppenheimer, you could have done this in an anticipatory fashion, but given the ending of the Odyssey in particular and how much of it is about legacy and guilt and shame and interrogating the great man idea that is so central to so much of Nolan's, preoccupation in his work, this actually feels like a nice way to do it and to look back. And also because it was the big awards, breakthrough and darling, and the Odyssey until Dune 3 comes in and just, that's the only thing we're all talking about, Feels like it has a chance to really dominate the discussion as well.
You're not an Elsinore truther?
There's still time.
Okay.
Give it time. Who knows?
I think I'll be seeing it pretty soon. I'll let you know.
When we did I've said this before, but I didn't participate in real time at the theater in Barbenheimer, and the Barbenheimer extravaganza. Halo had a surgery that weekend. We were watching him for multiple weeks after that. By that time, I was like, I'll just watch this movie at home. So I actually never saw Oppenheimer in movie theaters, which is like not ideal, obviously.
I think I saw it like 4 times.
Yeah. But, and now certainly I think in the last year, I've shifted a little bit out of we have a big TV and nice speakers and room darkening shades. Like, I can watch movies comfortably at home, and boy, it's really great to be back at the movie theater with my friends. I think after the 2020, 2021, 2022 anxiety has abated a little bit. So I have not seen this movie in that setting. When I watched it for the first time, it was months into not only the Barbenheimer cultural zeitgeist animating moment of this really unique shared experience, but people talking about Oppenheimer like it was this incredible achievement. And I don't think that was the ideal way to go into seeing it. I admired it and respected it. And I think when I saw it the first time, I really appreciated and liked the first 2 hours, but was pretty baffled by the third act relying and resting so heavily on the straws trial. Nothing about that opinion has changed, no matter how many times I've revisited it. I still find the balance of the film and how much of the focus. I understand the logic and rationale behind the choice, and I think that in terms of the portrait of inadequacy and the strivers compared to the people who actually achieve, and which of those things is frankly more dangerous in terms of the impact it has on the world. I understand all of the reasons to structure the film that way and balance the story that way. It's just not as interesting when you shift into that stretch at the end, because the first 2 hours are so riveting and gobsmacking. Rewatching it multiple times this last year, I have found myself so swept up in the first 2 hours of it. I think the first 2 hours of this movie are among the great achievements in the Nolan filmography. When Joe and I did our rankings a few weeks ago, I had it at 6. And the thing about the Nolan ranking, you're going through 13 movies, they're all good. They're all good to some extent. And through, for me, 10, I think through 10, I was I actually really like all of these movies. There's a degree of
I would generally
love for them.
agree with that. I mean, Dark Knight Rises has some some flaws.
Yeah, but it also has Bane, and he fucking rules.
I love Bane.
He fucking rules.
It's funny, like this criticism that you just shared, which I think you share, and I know Amanda shares because she brings it up every time we talk about Oppenheimer on the third act, is one of those things where I'm like, for the big spectacle movies, we tend to hand wave like a lot of the flaws where we're like, oh yeah, but this movie has Bane. It's a fun Batman movie. But for whatever reason, like the hang up, I think, with Oppenheimer, among some of its, if not detractors, people who have notes for it, it's a very similar kind of note that I think you could have for almost all of his movies, which is perceptionally, there is some kind of like structural flaw where he's like reached too far. Like he has done this incredible thing. Yeah. And, you know, there's something to that, I think, you know, that he's really interested in these really ambitious people that really reach for something beyond themselves, much like Batman. And so this is the rare case, I think, where maybe that hang up doesn't bother me because I'm very, very interested in the core idea that creates the friction between the three acts and the two story structures, between the Strauss structure and between the Oppenheimer structure. And that idea is very simple, which is you mentioned the idea of the striver and this idea of ambition, and there's two strains of ambition. One is for power and one is for ideas. And sometimes ideas start reaching towards power. And whenever power starts reaching towards ideas, that's when we get a mess of a world. And he seemed to be genuinely interested in the mess of the world, like kind of what happened. That seemed to animate his interest in telling the story. I just love that idea. I think that's pretty sophisticated, and maybe doesn't make the movie as fun in the final hour, but I thought it was pretty deep.
Absolutely. I think it's incredibly deep. You know, his most repeated inspiration that I saw was Amadeus, obviously, one of my favorite movies of all time, and a structure that always works for me. And Prestige also has a lot of Amadeus DNA in it, but it is like a more evenly balanced. And Amadeus, it is in many ways a Salieri movie, actually. And this, in sort of chasing that Amadeus energy, I think the Strauss stuff is so much weaker in a way that makes it feel unbalanced. I also, this is just like not my favorite Downey performance. And also, unfortunately, for my guy, Alden Ehrenreich, he is just saddled with a lot of just saying the thing. One of your biggest critiques of Inception, right? Which is just sort of like, you know, when we try to compliment Tenet, we like to say, you know, he said, just like, you know, just feel it. Don't try to understand it, right? And so when he is making his sort of like, this is one of the first things you said when you came out of the Odyssey, where you're talking about the rapid edits and cuts in the Odyssey, which is, of course, here as well, this sort of like montage approach, impressionistic, Eisenstein-esque like approach to storytelling. And it works so well. And then you just sort of like grinds to a halt for me a bit when Alden Ehrenreich has to say like, well, so it was you, like he's Hercule Poirot in the drawing room trying to tell you who did the crime. And that's like the ideas that you outline, I think, are incredible, but the execution, and I can forgive a flaw in a diamond for sure.
I think you're absolutely right. And I can't really quibble with it. I think the other major influence, which you guys have cited here too, is JFK. And that's really more the JFK strain, where JFK is this kind of wild frenzy of ideas. But whenever the film flashes to black and white, it's attempting to create this kind of heightened docudrama experience. And it's a borrowed style. Right. And so he's attempting to fuse this wild editing, impressionistic style that you described, which I love. And I think this, to me, is the pinnacle of that. The first 40 minutes of this movie is so breathtaking. I could tell within the first 5 minutes that I was going to fall in love with it. And seeing it, it's so obnoxious, but seeing it on IMAX, on the big screen, and hearing Göransson's score immediately, and the raindrops falling, and him thinking about that, and that moment when he's sort of thinking about the mechanics of bomb building and throwing the glass and looking at the Cubist paintings, and his mind kind of turning around art and science together. I felt like that was a huge step forward, or he had like I said, kind of cracked something, but he also wanted to have this idea about America. And so he's borrowing movies not just about Mozart, but about presidential assassinations. And so in this attempt to kind of create a stew, like he has a better handle on some styles than others.
And I think this idea of like creating a story about America is so successful when you get things like the Gary Oldman scene or what Matt Damon is doing this whole movie. Like all of that stuff. All of that stuff really, really works for me.
I do like the Alden Ehrenreich's characters just called Senate aide, which so for him to get the following the blonde treatment, that's pretty great.
Says a lot. What do you think it is? We've been sort of talking around this for a little bit, but like I've been really bumping on his sort of like what I'm calling his ingenue problem as we have discuss sort of the weaker elements of even the films we love, like, say, the Ariadne character in Inception, et cetera, there is this sort of like type of character. I would say I think Tom Holland is one of the weaker parts of the Odyssey. It does not have to be gendered, but Alden Ehrenreich, I think, again, I love Alden, but like the writing for him is really tough in this movie. And so do you have any thoughts about what it is about this archetype that is not very successful in Nolan films?
Well, I mean, I think you could make the case that Penelope carries some of that load in the Odyssey as well, where there are long stretches of the movie where they use these characters to allow other characters to explain to them what's really going on in the story. And so they're meant to seem, one, they're not what Nolan is really best at, which is sort of men and or women, but mostly men of action. You know, people who drive the action of the story. That's something that he really leans into. He's like a student of David Lean in that respect, where his protagonists are these sort of like swashbuckling adventurous types. And the counterpoint to that always has to be somebody but like who's like, oh, tell me more. How does this work, sir? And that's a little bit different from the dead wife problem, but there's a sort of a correlation there where there's sort of like
can be a Venn diagram.
But it's like, let me create these kind of motivating factors and let's also build characters who can help our hero explain what's really happening here. Yeah. Again, one of the reasons why I like Tenet, which sort of like is dispensing with that and calling the primary character the protagonist instead of a side character, Senate aide, or, you know, a single named woman who doesn't really have any depth.
Yeah, I think, you know, one of the things I so love about Nolan's movies, this has been one of the really fun things to talk about and track, because the films are very distinct from each other and he plays across different genres, but there are these this is an aspect of a thread across the tapestry. And his movies, his style, it's like so utterly specific, right? And there are details and aspects not only of his craft and the way he makes films, but of each story that's, you're like, this is only Inception. It can only be Inception, right? I'm in Interstellar definitively. But then they're also, in tandem with that, functioning as fables, right? He is interested, to your point from earlier, in like, through a specific lens of his style, a broad assessment of human nature and human capacity. And so I think the tendency to put characters like that in the movie is like, there's a function to it. You know, the kind of like gentle, youthful innocence of needing and wanting to understand. Is that always effectively rendered in the films? Like, no. But I understand what leads him to put characters like that in the movie. I get a kick out of you putting Telemachus in that category. It makes me laugh. And it is interesting to, you know, we talked about this a little bit on the Odyssey pod.
Tell me about my dad.
Yeah, it was, we talked about this a bit on the Odyssey pod, but like if you just compare a couple of the most recent Odyssey adaptations, you know, with Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey and then The Return, like the Telemachus character is among the most differently and distinctly rendered, right? There's like a violence and a rage to the Telemachus in The Return that is just like not present in Nolan's version of it. So yeah, I wonder if that's like a mileage may vary viewer to viewer person, but the fact that it's very consistent in the movies feels purposeful.
I want to go back to sort of how we got here in the first place with Oppenheimer, which is, you know, the story's been told a million times with the fact that Robert Pattinson gave Christopher Nolan a book of Oppenheimer speeches after they made Tenet together. Of course, Oppenheimer is mentioned in Tenet. The fact that it started with the speeches. So one of our listeners, Sam, who sends like the best emails, sent me a really, 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 really incredible long email about the speech scene in Oppenheimer, which has like you know, incredible analysis of it. But it helped me really appreciate in my last rewatch the way in which, you know, the thumping of the feet on the floor is executed auditorially at these key moments leading up to. So the way in which that sort of impressionistic montage storytelling leads you to this is the beating heart core of the story. It could be the Trinity test if you decide, but I think most people believe it is this speech scene that he gives after the bombs have been dropped. And I was thinking about it as sort of like, this is the snow fortress. This is what's inside the safe of the snow fortress of Oppenheimer's mind. And it keeps sort of like calling to him throughout as he's sort of explaining things. And then we finally get there and it is so horrific and incredibly technically executed. But I love the idea that like the germ for this movie was because that speech as it exists in the film is lifted directly from, you know, the language is what Oppenheimer said. Mm-hmm. So for Nolan to have read that speech and then sort of been caught on this idea of like, what could he have been thinking when he said this? And of course, like American Prometheus is, the blueprint for this movie, but just like that scene coming from that book given to him by Robert Pattinson and sort of like building, sort of how we were talking about with Lantern early this week, like starting with one image and sort of like building out this entire labyrinth from there to get to this thing at the center of the maze.
So just to be clear, the one image that the film built from was not the poisoned green apple. Big apple war movie for us because the red apple consumed in full in real time. The green apple with the cyanide injected sits there untouched for long enough that Oppie can pull it away, not commit a murder. Notable.
I really didn't think you could surprise me anymore in the fact that you said that instead of Cillian Murphy sitting naked in the chair, and you've restrained yourself from mentioning it thus far into the podcast is really impressive.
I just feel fairly sure we'll be making that a meme, photoshopping Sean's head onto that image and putting it on our Instagram. Do we have your permission?
If only I could be that svelte.
Do we have your permission to do that?
Whatever you want. At this point,
the way I'm
out of control of the memes.
Bill loved to put your face on movie posters for rewatchables.
He did. He was sort of a
back in the day
a meme innovator.
He literally had a poster of you in his office of the
silent judge.
Silent judge in the old pre-COVID days.
An Imagine TNT series in which I was some sort of lawyer. I guess who was solving cases
sitting there
silently,
judging. Yeah.
This is a reference to the fact that frequently things were uttered in ringer meetings, and I was like, I'm not sure if that's such a good idea, but I never said that out loud.
You could tell.
But you could tell.
It
was very disapproving.
Yeah. What do you think in terms of like there was an idea? What do you think is at the core of this movie?
Regret within accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to be the big concept, and the scene that you were just describing is really about that. It's about trying to find a way to communicate that without having Oppenheimer say, "What have I done?" Without having to, Straws.
I have such doubt.
And Ehrenreich, they get to sort of over communicate some of the consequences and circumstances. But Oppenheimer, even in a sort of quasi courtroom function in the film opposite Jason Clarke, isn't actually able to honestly communicate through most of that discussion because he's protecting himself and he's trying to navigate his own safety long term. And so there's something really interesting about the kind of like the restrained pain that he feels in the almost immediate aftermath. I mean, this is kind of skipping ahead to one of the categories, but my favorite shot in the movie is not of the Trinity test. It's not of the raindrops falling. It's specifically Oppenheimer being hoisted on men's shoulders after the success of the Trinity test with the American flag waving behind him, because there's just like a scintilla of regret on Murphy's face. And, it's such a special performance in this movie. But the movie kind of turns on that specific moment where it feels like they've accomplished something. And then this is where everything is about to go downhill.
Yeah.
And it's a brilliant piece of filmmaking. And it's nice that, Nolan can't help but kind of announce his themes and intentions throughout his movies, which I usually bump on. This is a case where like that's not an understated sequence that you just described, but it's not overstated either. It just is appropriate given the magnitude of the story.
And it does make the moments, especially with Oppenheimer's character himself, in part because, as the movie says out loud many times, the most important man who ever lived. Like, this is such a consequential thing, and you understand that as a viewer, but also just the Cillian Murphy performance is exquisite. Like, it's gorgeous. The expression on his face, that shot that you're identifying the hoisted on the shoulders, the fact that we as, especially with this American movie, but sports fans the world over, you associate that with, like, celebrating the win, and that is the headspace that some people in that moment are occupying. But, like, it almost feels like over the IMAX lens, there's an X-ray machine, and you can see the twisting of the gut just because of what he's conveying on his face. So then when you have a moment, like, I really like the Jason Clarke performance in this movie. I love him. And when Roger Robb is like berating him, 220,000 dead at least. Yes. Any moral scruples about that? He does say terrible ones, but it's 2 words. It's not a grand speech in that moment. There's a gentle, quiet delivery. And we have seen the moments that you're both identifying that make the truth of that even inside of the machinations of what will you do or not do to kind of preserve or protect your reputation. You shook his hand, the way Kitty is talking about the teller handshake, et cetera, and then the payoff, obviously, at the salmon dinner of not shaking it. we understand that we don't need him to say it. So then the moment when he does say it doesn't feel like, did you need to say it, like some other moments can, because we understand it in full, and the fact that he is acknowledging it is the point.
Something that really unlocked for me in my latest rewatch, which was this morning, was
this is a 3-hour movie.
Time to wake up.
We recorded. We started this about at 9:30. We did not sleep last night. We had a late friend of the fest 10 o'clock screening.
No kidding.
Yeah. So we both.
How'd it go?
I would say got to bed at 2 o'clock, but didn't go to sleep. And
was it Labyrinth?
It was Labyrinth.
I've never seen the movie.
It was great.
My first time ever seeing that film.
Oh, I love Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Wonderful
so good.
stuff.
Yeah. It was really fun to show.
Is that what,
I love Ludo, big Ludo fan instantly.
Was Bowie playing in here earlier? Synced to the Labyrinth film? No?
But it's nice that you thought that was the
you just
case.
feel like Bowie is
just
Maybe
in the
you just
air.
had that energy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, was he the Goblin King?
Don't people usually say I have Bowie energy?
You do have Bowie energy.
Absolutely.
I wish. You 100% do.
I wish.
Tesla?
Something that a layer that really
bring it back.
True.
Nice
that's
job.
True, nice. A layer that really struck me this morning was like among the sort of like genuine what have I wrought sort of regret, which we can chase through all of Nolan's movies. There's also this other fascinating layer inside of this story, which is in terms of the like calling it the Trinity test or I've become death, destroyer of worlds, the clear God complex that exists for Oppenheimer. Yeah. And then the moment that the creation and the decision around the creation is taken out of his hands.
Yes.
And the bomb is shipped off to Washington and he's like, should I come? And Damon's like, whatever for, essentially. Good. But, and he, he's repeating to other scientists, not us, up to us, what should be done. But you can tell that there's like, I feel like the film is trying to say, and this is not a great revelation necessarily, but like I feel like the film is saying like, yeah, does he have profound regrets? Yeah, that exists for him, but also like maybe how much of this is his ego and the fact that he got to like sort of like play God, justify the increasingly dangerous steps he was taking towards this end goal. And then he was not at the end of the day the ultimate decider on what was done with his creation. And so there is this, then there is this hypocrisy inside of his advocacy against the thing he created because he's no longer the one who gets to decide what we do with it.
Yeah, I think it's quite subtle because some of it is that general feeling of loss of control where anytime you've worked hard on something and it's no longer in your hands. I think that's very relatable.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
And then there's also something that is of much greater consequence, which is moving from the theoretical to the actual makes things real, and men of science, women of science often live in the theoretical, like I'm married to a mathematician. My father-in-law is a math professor. Like these are, I know a lot of people whose minds are occupied by concepts, but not necessarily like practical executions.
Yeah.
And so, I'm interested in people like that. I love people like that, but they don't often think specifically about the pragmatic next step.
And then Michael Angarano's like, here's a slideshow that shows you exactly the consequences of your actions.
Exactly.
Well, and like, I think we've all been talking, many of our colleagues and fellow podcasters have been talking about like, well, what's next for Nolan? He's done Oppenheimer, he's done The Odyssey. Like what movies who's going to interest him and draw his attention next? And like that specific thing, in the way the movie constantly returns our attention to that idea of like theory can only take you so far and literalizes it, the relationship between like Oppie and Lawrence from the word go, right? Nolan is somebody who is interested in big ideas. And we hear across the movies that I have been thinking about this for 20 years. This was the first story I ever wrote. I just had to wait till I could return. But you also, so you understand why the theory would interest him, but you also understand why that part of like what happens when you go beyond theory for a tactile technician like he is, like somebody who is so not only focused on his craft and expert at it, but like serious about pushing it forward, right? And about thinking about how do you build a team?
What happens when
who's your editor? Who's your cinematographer?
What happens when Warner Brothers gets to decide how your movie is displayed?
Yeah,
at home or
you
talk about I finished my work of art and now it's out of my hands.
Exactly. Yeah. It's fascinating.
On this sort of to tie a bow on this idea of the architect of your own misfortune, the what have I wrought concept. You and I were talking about this a little bit off pod, where this theory coming out of Oppenheimer that people really cherished was this idea that like the central metaphor, the big regret of Christopher Nolan's life that he is reflecting back in Oppenheimer's story is I made Batman Begins and I brought, the age of the superhero cinema and that ruined Hollywood. And that's my big regret. And you and I were both talking about, like, we were talking about this, I think, right before Spider-Man. And we were like, it's a little interesting and it's kind of funny, but we both don't think that is like, that can't be the only answer, especially when he reiterates it again in the Odyssey. I'm like, he's not so torn up about having made Batman that he had to make 2 massive movies about it. So do you have any theories?
It's also just not true. Like they were making superhero movies before the Dark Knight trilogy.
They were, but I don't think you can. I don't ascribe to this theory. I do not think it is why he has been telling this story. I do think there is a difference of pre-Nolan Batman, post-Nolan Batman.
Yeah,
it definitely changed.
I think there was a cultural shift. I think it's amusing conversation fodder.
Yeah.
If the idea crossed his mind, I wouldn't be shocked. Yeah. It being the primary motivating factor for making a movie about J. Robert Oppenheimer, it's a bit of a stretch.
Exactly.
I think that intellectual dynamic that we're describing here is the thing that is most interesting to him, which is sort of like, well, to quote another superhero, with great power comes great responsibility. Like there is something in that conceit that keeps drawing him back, and like that's in The Prestige, that's in Inception, right? That's in Cobb, that's in Interstellar, with the idea of sort of like taking a great leap towards something, and then we're having that deep regret about having missed your children's lives. So I don't know if there's a single answer for why people do things, and I sometimes get caught in the rabbit holes of psychologizing why filmmakers make certain decisions because I'm so interested in the choices that they make.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know Christopher Nolan. I've never met him. I've never talked to him before. Seems to come from an interesting family. I don't know what could possibly be motivating the desire to discover this, but I do think that there's something really interesting in the kind of dyad of Dunkirk in this movie, which is, he's a British American man, and he's told one World War II story through the prism of a sort of British dignity, which has these kind of flashes of vulnerability. Speaking of Cillian Murphy, his character in that film, or some of the emotional outbursts when they're trapped in the ship. But for the most part, that's sort of a stiff upper lip tribute. And I find
the lads.
Yes, and I find Oppenheimer to be this emotional American breakdown. It's sort of like once America comes into that war and the literal megaton power that they bring to world conflict, and that they bring to the way that they've kind of shaped the world stage over the last 80, 85 years. I say they as if I'm not a member of this country. And I'm sure that maybe some personal push and pull that he feels between those two ideas, and that he is very much an American and very much a Brit, and that this world-changing conflict is something that fascinated most people who were born in the 20th century. How could you not be interested in World War II? So that's one thing that I think about with him, and the fact that he came back to a World War II story so quickly after making Dunkirk is of note to me.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too to think of Dunkirk and Oppenheimer as on opposite sides of the coin in terms of the individual and the collective, and which one is more central in the focus. Certainly aspects of Oppenheimer are about the collective, both in terms of nationhood, but also in terms of the scientific community or the political community, any number of things of that nature. The family unit, right? The idea of giving all of the wives the jobs and bringing the families to Los Alamos, et cetera. But it is so much about J. Robert.
Yeah, it's called Oppenheimer. Yeah.
And it is about this person and his impact on history and his
What's more American than that? The rugged individualist nation.
Even, Grove's, Damon's character, showing up and being like, the reason I'm here to talk to you is because everybody just had bad things to say about you, and I needed to understand that. It's so much about the you than him. Dunkirk is such a, we think, I think, lovely. Yeah, exactly. And again, there are aspects of that in Oppenheimer. It is all of the physicists pulling together to try to solve this problem. Can the American physicists who have made their way here beat the Germans, beat Heisenberg and his crew? But, then you have moments not the famous Einstein-Oppenheimer scene that ends the film, but the one shortly before that by the car, and Einstein saying to him, like, you don't think I understand this? Like, I left my country, never returned. You serve your country well. If this is the reward she offers you, then perhaps you should turn your back on her. That is, like, quite different from the Dunkirk perspective.
It is.
Anything you want to say, Mallory Rubin, about the sexual content of this film?
Yeah, I'd be delighted.
Okay, great.
I just think horny Nolan is really welcome, and I'm glad we got it.
It's the only. I mean, it's this and Carrie Ann Moss spitting in the beer. In terms of, like,
I know
true
you find that
very,
very horny.
Freakiness.
Yeah.
The cut from the Gene Oppenheimer wiggle room flirtation into them fucking tits out. If you've been watching Nolan fans for 2 decades, is a real shot. It's like, wow. And then the fact that we get the "now I am become death, destroyer of worlds" quote for the first time while they're fucking is just really something memorable. Great stuff. I think that when Robert meets Kitty, you're married to Dr. Harrison, not very. It's pretty horny inside of a Nolan movie. That's great. That's great. The dual nude armchair. Them sitting, naked, cross-legged, Gene and Oppenheimer in the armchairs.
Important to you emotionally?
It became iconic for a reason, I think.
It was funny because, we talked about this a lot when we talked about the Odyssey, the fact that despite the source material involving, Odysseus, like, fucking his way home, it's a very, like, sexless version of the Odyssey. And so that was fun to think about in terms of coming back to Oppenheimer, because I was like, oh, maybe in Oppenheimer he turned a corner and he was like, I would like to put more sexual content in my stories for some reason, even though I have not been really doing it before. But that's not the case. And so then you're sort of like, okay, so then why this story? And I think it goes back to what you were outlining, this idea of, like, American power and this idea of American greed or warmongering, and how that is tied up in sort of, like, rapacious appetite. And so the fact that, like, sexual content is part of that, and the way in which, like, the death of Gene and the dropping of the bomb are, like, the blood on his hands and connected in the edit very distinctly. And so the way in which, like, sex and violence are connected makes sense to me why this is the one story that thus far in his career that he has decided to put explicit-ish sexual content in.
I think the appetite, the word you just used, is perfect. Like, there is a hunger. I think there's also just something humanizing about it, genuinely. Like, is it titillating and salacious when we're in the interrogation room scene and suddenly Florence Pugh is there? You fucking Gene and Oppenheimer are fucking, and Kitty is watching, and it's like, I have not seen something quite like this in a Nolan movie. Yeah, of course. But the idea that a character, this actual person in history who is doing this unbelievably consequential thing, and you have other moments in the movie that achieve this, like they say you couldn't run a hamburger stand, like I couldn't, right? But the idea that there's something, like, messy about his sex life and his yearning and his need, and also just there's something human about impulse, lack of impulse control, being led by your desire, but also, of course, then the self-obsession, not only the melding of the violence in the edit, which is very striking and I think notable on the the great man front, but, like, the fact that, and there's the we feel empathy, I think, on the, like, you carry guilt based on how you've treated other people front when we watch Robert sobbing beneath the tree in New Mexico and Kitty finds him, but also the fact that he's like, I did this. It's my fault. My fault. What happened to Gene is my fault. Me. Because everything I do has an impact, the ripple, on everybody else in the world, individual people in my life and also the world at large. Like, the movie ending on a shot of atmospheric ignition, this threat that looms over the entire film, every individual relationship that he has, there's a version of that atmospheric ignition from his perspective too. And so the sex is kind of a way of unlocking that.
Yeah, there's something, I have a lot to say about what you guys are saying. So smart. Love this show.
You're welcome anytime.
So
we'd love to have you.
I think there's an interesting intellectual conflict with how people receive this movie, because you've already said the phrase "a great man" a couple times, and it is obviously about a man who did something "quote unquote" great, and it is a very narcissistic portrait of a person.
Oh yeah,
and everything that he does has this very upsetting ripple effect, whether it be on a single woman or on a community of people or on friends of his who were part of a socialist communist community, or his colleagues in science, or his family and his wife and his children, or the American president and the American idea. Like, he has this kind of corrupting quality.
Yeah.
So, like, on the one hand, you would say, well, that's not a very noble portrait of a person. Like, this is a person who created kind of great shame and great violence in the world.
Yeah.
But then there's also something so empathetic about Cillian Murphy as a performer. Yeah. And so clearly like an admiration that Nolan brings to the achievements of this great mind. And not just the mind who is able to sort of formulaically solve something, but build a team and execute something collectively.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons why like I think I reject the general like, well, this is just a great man movie, like as though it were a movie about like a John Ford movie that has an uncritical look at someone who raped and pillaged across the American frontier, is because it feels like on any given day while they were making the film, Nolan had a different perspective on who what Oppenheimer represented and who he was.
Yeah.
And to me, that friction is really exciting and really interesting to think about. And it speaks to, I just think, most people that I know, which is like even the closest people in the world to you make terrible mistakes or do things that they deeply regret and wish they hadn't done. And so I'm not sure if I'd necessarily like, to me, this isn't Gandhi, right? Mm-hmm. Gandhi is a portrait of a movie of like a man who did effectively no wrong.
I both agree with you, but then I kind of, then my thinking comes back around to the other side, because on the one hand, yes, there's so many moments in the movie. Like that moment you were talking about when Kitty finds him crying over Jean, and she says, you don't get to commit the sin and get us to feel sorry for you because it has consequences. Like that could be the thesis of the movie, right? So it's just sort of like, he's a great, people throughout the movie tell him he's one of the most important man, right? But also we watch him feel, his soul get rotted out from underneath him because of what he did. So Nolan is saying, but then there's the moment when Oppenheimer says, is anyone ever going to tell the truth about what happened here?
Yeah.
In terms of his encounter with Jason Clarke, that whole thing. Mm-hmm. And then you can just almost hear Christopher Nolan from off camera being like, I will, and then we're supposed to be like cheering for Strauss when he gets his comeuppance. Like he's the villain of the piece. Yeah. So then there is this way in which just by the dint of the construct of the film, it valorizes Oppenheimer. And like there's a ton of people who didn't even really know who Oppenheimer was. So just by existing as a piece of art, it elevates him.
That's my point.
Other
it's
generations.
Both. Yeah. It really is both. Yeah. It's like I think Oppenheimer can both be seen as this complex figure who did things that without enough consideration, that he let his ambition lead him, but that also he was railroaded by a bureaucratic state that effectively like fucked up the 20th century in America.
Yeah.
So to me, the dynamic of both of those things being true is part of what makes the movie very exciting for me.
Yeah.
And doesn't draw me back and doesn't make it feel like a fusty 1982 Hollywood claptrap kind of awards prestige movie. Like it is, to me, it feels much deeper than that.
Well, you mentioned, of course, Lawrence of Arabia, and I told you this, that I saw this as part of American Cinematheque 70 millimeter. I mean, they show it all the time, every year, whatever. But I saw it again on the big screen this summer. So thinking a lot about that complicated portrait of a man. And
not such a nice man to you, Lawrence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Peter O'Toole is so handsome, so charming, but then you're like, dear God. And he's also like, dear God, oh my. And then I saw JFK for the first time. I had never seen it. And so thinking about it as an inspiration, that is such one of the messiest films I've ever seen in my entire life. And I was like kind of shocked by how messy it was, because I think I had this sort of like more staid idea of what I thought it was just sort of like, I think Kevin Costner and I think JFK, and I'm like, and I've seen the clip of like Back and to the Right, like I know what like the courtroom moments were,
it's a
and
total
I just
fever
didn't
dream.
Understand how insane it was, and so thinking about all those other ingredients in the stew was really fun, and I'm so glad I had just freshly rewatched this when we watched The Odyssey, so that I could sit there in the theater and be like, the Trojan horse is the atomic bomb.
It was really fun. Obviously the term American Prometheus that we've already mentioned a few times comes from the text, from the source text that Nolan adapted here, but the way that is incorporated into the film, it's the opening language in the first few visuals. We get Niels saying, "You are an American Prometheus, the man who gave them the power to destroy themselves." and they'll respect that, then your work really begins. So I think we understand why Nolan is drawn to the like American Prometheus. You can feel that pulling him in magnetically, like whether he wanted to be pulled in or not, because the idea of the Prometheus, like the Titan, right? The godly Titan who is the way that, and this is kind of, Joe has tracked over the, as a Jonathan Nolan lover, the differences of maybe onto your emotionality point. And I think I'm slightly more drawn to some of the emotional beats in like Inception, for example. Like I find that movie to be deeply moving, but like the other side of the related aspect of are these movies always like pulling on your heartstrings is there's an intellectual rigor to them. And like the way that he is saying that Nolan is clearly interested in just what is the capacity for achievement? What is the capacity for achievement? And so there are those moments where it feels like there is admiration. Undeniably, I agree, Joe. But even still, there's always a little bit of a tether to I'm like studying this scientifically almost. Like, how are people capable of these things? And if you are one of the people who's capable of those things, then what is your impact on the world? And then how do you feel about
because
it?
He thinks he's one of those people.
Yeah.
Well, think about it practically. One of the interesting technical takeaways from The Odyssey was that this is the first feature film ever shot completely with IMAX cameras. Yeah. And the only way to accomplish that was to build these sound blimps around the cameras so that it effectively would not be too loud and you'd be able to have dialogue sequences and you could hear dialogue.
Unlike in Tenet.
Which is, of course, an issue in many of Nolan's films. I will note also Oppenheimer. It's one of the great achievements of that movie is you can hear what everyone's saying to each other.
Yeah.
Because it's more of, it's a talky movie. It's a much talkier movie than almost all of his films. But the idea of him pushing that format so aggressively and pushing the technology needed to execute that format in full to deliver to audiences his perception of the grandest stage is really interesting to me because, one of the drawbacks of that technology is that final sequence, which I love in the Odyssey of Odysseus, stringing the bow, firing the arrow, and then taking on all comers is wonderful and very exciting. And the second time I watched it, I was like, oh, this is quite herky-jerkily edited because it's very hard to shoot action of this scale with cameras like this. And there's a lot of questions going forward about whether or not he's going to do this again because he may not be able to. You could not shoot the action in Tenet with those cameras, at least not in any consistent long sequence basis. So, it's his very modest version of like, we spent all this time trying to figure out if we should. We never thought about whether or whether we could. We never thought about whether we should. And like he also likes to kind of bump up against the limitations of his own design. So I do see, even if I can't personally psychologize some of the things, I do see a lot of the strategies that he brings to movie making into the characters that he is most fascinated by. And that's a fun thing that he does. Like most filmmakers, you can look at their work and they also have these recurrences, but they're not so easy to map. Like you guys have been talking about him for over a year now. You can see it's not just that he likes the same couple of story ideas. It's that they're like resonant in all these different directions through every movie that is very fun to kind of pick apart, which is one of the reasons why he's really the filmmaker of the century, that he's like somebody that people love to talk about and they love to think about.
On that note, and then I do want to get to our superlatives, but I was thinking a lot about, you made this great collaborative list of the best Nolan films on The Big Pick. We did our individual lists. Everyone's Nolan list is different.
Yes. And beautiful in their own way.
Yeah. It's very special. No, I'm not here to bury your list. I think what is
you did that in real time. You were like, this is an outrage and you guys owe me a blood debt.
Yeah, I also took my hands off the wheel big time in that one. I was like, this would not be my list at all.
But it's almost like an Enneagram. It's because the stories are being kind of retold again and again and again. To decide which version of that story, which are again the same themes over and over again, which one plucks the string of your particular bow and resonates with you, I think is really interesting. And like thinking about, again, some of the movies feel emotional to me and some of them don't, but they're always rife with these ideas.
Yes.
And so it's sort of like, okay, what is the most central idea and why is that, resonating with me? There's this great Brendan Hodges essay about it was the one on Oppenheimer where he says about Nolan films, they are the dream catchers of universal fears shared between him, his characters, and it seems us, the wide audience. And so what I love about that is like, what is the core fear? You know, Chris, when he was on here talking about Dunkirk, was talking, you know, his most beloved Nolan film, was talking about this repeated theme of trying to get home,
right?
And how he's like, all of Nolan films are about trying to get home. Or when Rebecca came on to talk to us about Tenet, and she was talking about the family unit and how Nolan's preoccupation with like reuniting the family in the family unit. And so I was like, why the prestige for me? And I was like, oh, like those feelings of like competitive inadequacy and like, you know, competition and like, will I ever be satisfied with my achievement?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, that's the thing that sort of like animates me. And so that's what's so great about the repetition inside of Nolan is it's a repeated story again and again, but slightly focused in on one corner or another.
Yeah, it's refracted, you know, and you bring a lot of your personal experience. I, of course, am a great man, and so Oppenheimer is my pick.
I get it. I've always said that about you. All right, should we do our categories, our superlatives?
Do it.
Production.
Wow, graphics. Sheesh.
I
feel like I'm on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah, you are.
You're welcome here at the Sycamore Complex anytime.
Soon we'll have sort of the lighting change like it does on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. I always love that for us. Okay, we're doing our Oppenheimer top 14. It was going to be top 15, but then we saw the Odyssey, so we're no longer doing that. Looking forward at the Odyssey category. So we're starting, as we often do, with why so serious? Funniest line or moment of this incredibly hilarious movie. Sean Fennessey, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I mean, my favorite quote is the quote that you have for a later category, but I'll just utter it now, which is, amateurs seek the sun, get eaten, power stays in the shadows, which is, of course, not uttered by Oppenheimer, and is not true, and is sort of the inverse thesis of the movie in a lot of ways, you know, that power feels the need to rise, you know, and that one of the reasons why the third act of the movie works so well for me is because power and ambition and ego are intertwined in such a unique way, and that there's no person like Oppenheimer who very quietly just like does his work and achieves something special and gets no credit, and we never hear about him again. And the same is true for ambitious drivers like Strauss. And it's also just it's a very amusingly delivered line in the movie that doesn't sound like anything anyone would ever say.
Yeah.
And that is a constant definitely. In Nolan movies where people are frequently saying things where you're like, what'd you say? Like, why would you say it that way? So I'm a fan of this one.
I don't. Would you say Krumholtz's character, Robbie, who like quietly like takes over Oppenheimer's role, is he sort of someone who just sort of quietly and effectively does his job and is sort of
always has a snack on
the
hand?
warm moral center of this
a nice
fruit.
orange slice.
Loves fruit.
Important.
I love him.
David Krumholtz just announced that he stepping back from acting.
I know, but then he like came out and was like, "Just kidding, I'm not."
Yeah,
retiring.
We'll see. It's hard to know. He didn't say he was retiring, right? He said he was going to step back, but I hope he doesn't, because he's wonderful in this movie and in many other movies. Yeah, I think maybe you could. I think that's more to me. That part of the story is a sign that, one, he was a part of a large scientific community, and two, that as soon as someone in a meaningful role steps away, there will be someone there to fill you in right away. Like no hole is too big to be filled.
But I love that it's him and not someone who, you know, not like Teller or someone else who we sort of like resent. Mallory.
I have a few lines that make me laugh early in the movie that kind of fall into a bucket of like delivered in casual conversation to rib the other person that really make me chuckle in this movie. So they're of a piece. The Straws, no, I'm not trained in physics or anything else. I'm a self-made man. And then Oppenheimer says, I can relate to that. Really? Yes, my father was one. Just absolutely kills me.
No, the entire Strauss Oppenheimer
so good
origin scene is, you know, it's just barb. And it
such an effective setup.
Not lowly, just a shoe salesman, actually.
Incredible stuff. I also quite like in the Oppenheimer Jean Chevalier sequence that, I'm sorry, I read it in the original German. Iconic, hysterical. Just the very kind of like organic way that he's able to, and it does help us feel that superiority, you know, because you have the adoration that people look at, but then like, okay, this guy's like full of himself. And then I like when he's on the other side of that one, Groves, I'd like to see Well, if that's how you treat Lieutenant Colonel have this dry clean with Nichols, I'd hate to see how you treat a humble physicist. If I ever meet one, I'll let you know. Ouch. It's good. It's not a laugh riot movie, but there are some amusing lines. And the rhythm of the language for people who are supposed to be that smart kind of has to deliver some rejoinders like that, some zingers that feel like they land. And I think the first hour in particular has quite a few. What about you, Joe?
No, I mean, I do think my real answer is that entire Strauss Oppenheimer, back and forth. I'm going to put a snarky answer instead and say the biggest laugh for me is always when poor Senate aide played by Alden Ehrenreich has to say, Kennedy, John F. Kennedy. It's the corniest moment of the whole movie, and it's very funny.
I agree it's very corny. If one of the reasons why I love JFK is because I saw it at a very young age. And so I certainly took much of what was shared in the film as a kind of American gospel.
Sure.
Not understanding history at all and not being yet taught about JFK's assassination.
Well, I think a lot of people,
And I think of this movie in a similar way where if I had seen it when I was 13, I would have been like,
whoa.
What? John F. Kennedy? Who I just learned about in school yesterday? There is a kind of, and I've said this many times about Nolan, there's a kind of adolescent glee with a lot of the writing that he puts in his films, where it's a little dopey and it's a little overstated, you know?
No, I'm sure the moment when he was reading American Prometheus or whatever, and he's like, wait, JFK was involved in the Strauss hearing?
Do you guys think that's a little breadcrumb though, tipping at interest in a future JFK story for Nolan, the way that the Oppenheimer quote was previously?
Would welcome it.
I don't. I just feel like we've had so many JFK stories.
We had gotten a lot of Odysseys.
Okay. Keep them coming.
What if Wishbone's episode about the Odyssey had stopped Christopher Nolan?
You're right. Or The Return, Odyssey. Your favorite movie that you like to talk about.
Ray Fiennes shows his dick. What am I going to do? Watch?
How'd that go?
Great. Great.
What did you do with that information?
I looked at my television and I hit pause and I kept looking. And then we hit play and I said to my husband, can you go back once more? And he did.
Oh, that's nice.
Adam's the best. One of the things, this genuinely makes me laugh. It's not a funny line, but it's just the way Damon says it as Groves when they're trying to recruit the various scientists. And he goes, why? How about because this is the most important fucking thing that's ever happened in the history of the world?
Incredible.
How about that?
It's incredible. It's so funny. It is really funny.
Is it the bitchiest he's ever been on screen?
Yes, he's so good.
Yeah, it's
really
between that and Candelabra, right?
Oh my God. If only he wore the tiny shorts in this movie. Okay. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Who is the real villain of this movie, Mallory Rubin?
So, I mean, obviously, we've already talked about this. It's not just literally Strauss and that character, but specifically through the lens of Nolan assessing Oppenheimer, it is the idea of inadequacy, right? Where does your insecurity lead you? And if you feel feeble in comparison to somebody who is achieving other things, then what do you do? So when Kitty has that line, the truly vindictive, patient as saints. So the lowly shoe salesman, not lowly, that look on his face that you mentioned. The isotope of all the things that we cut back to or forward to many, many times, the isotope with a beer bottle, and you do, it's more useful than a sandwich. And then that lingering look on Strauss' face, this guy made me feel embarrassed. And so I am going to destroy him and engage my every decision I make for the rest of my life and my career through ensuring that he can never impact policy again, because impacting policy means that he is undermining and dunking on me both publicly and just every minute of every conversation that we have. You don't know scientists like I do, counselor. They resent anyone who questions their judgment, especially if you're not one of them. The way that he is projecting in that moment with that line, he should be thanking me. Well, he's not. So good. I think the best, the real bow on this idea of you are so desperate to be the one everybody looks at and calls great and calls accomplished, when Strauss keeps talking throughout the film about this Einstein moment and the moment by the pond. And what did he say? He couldn't even meet my eye. And then Senate aide, Alden Ehrenreich said, since nobody really knows what they said to each other that day, is it possible they didn't talk about you at all? Is it possible they spoke about something more important? It's just even though that it's final stretch of the movie,
terrible line that Adeniran
is not my favorite part, and the language and deftness of the dialogue is not the best in that stretch. The idea behind it is
I don't think
quite
about you
effectively
at all. The Don Drapering
the Draper. He's Ginsberg, you know.
What's your answer here?
Well, the movie isn't a nest full of vipers, right? Mm-hmm. You've got William Borden, the lawyer and hack who's brought in to lie about something that Oppenheimer didn't do. You've got Boris Pash, the incredibly menacing and dangerous military intelligence officer that Casey Affleck plays. You've got, obviously, Strauss. You've got Edward Teller, who sort of betrays Oppenheimer ideologically and even practically. You've got Roger Robb, who's the vicious, I guess, prosecutorial attorney. Yeah. You've got Heisenberg, is a sort of a traitor to the idea of science and working with a corrupt empire. I think there's something really interesting in Ernest Lawrence.
Yeah.
The Hartnett character, who is a compatriot and a fellow traveler in some ways, but not in others. And you'll encounter someone like this in any career, or somebody who seems to be on your side.
Yeah.
And when things are good, they're with you. And when things start to turn, their allegiances wilt a bit. And it doesn't mean that they hate you or you hate them, but you're not all in it together. And I think this movie is an interesting portrayal of like a lot of different kinds of loyalty or the absence of. And so I don't know if there's any one true villain throughout the story, even though Strauss is so demarcated to be the bad guy. But rewatching the movie last week, when thinking about using someone like Hartnett, who was meant for this big fancy Hollywood career and kind of flamed out and was always a good actor and an interesting actor and one of those classic like Brad Pitt character actor in a leading man's body types. And he's so tall and so handsome, and he's so like on the side of right, and this is what the American cause will be. And your attempts to unionize this shop, or your inability to really communicate to the military that you understand what's really at stake here with this story, shows that like compromise is kind of at the heart of all of this. And it depends on how much of an ideologue you are, I think. As I get older, like I'm much less of an ideologue because I think that's impractical. And like I'm just trying to get to the second half of my life in many ways. And so you find a lot of people, and so like I do relate to Lawrence in some ways, but I also feel that the movie is kind of ungenerous towards him in a very subtle way, in a movie that is not very subtle.
That's such an interesting. I'm glad you brought him up because he is a really interestingly deployed character, and like I always find it fascinating revisiting it to see that in a movie where like there's a routine conversation among different parties and characters about who can you trust. Is there a spy? What don't we know? What information is making it out the door? Even something like Oppenheimer eventually having to give up Chevalier's name when he tried so hard not to, the idea of like, when do you have to bend? Where Lawrence, even though he's doing all of the things you outlined, he never hides his intention ever. He is in some way like the most forthright and true character. He's like, I'm telling you to your face, I can't put you on the project for this reason. I'm telling you to your face, I've been to those Berkeley meetings, you shouldn't go. Now, we don't have to agree with him, and I'm sure many people are appalled by the morality of his stance, but the fact that he's not trying to hide it from Robert or other people is interesting. And then building toward the fact that like when he shows up, when he's called,
that's the moment I respect him the least.
And then he like was going to do
it, and then he like leaves.
Got shamed
by Izzy,
Case of
and
colitis.
then slinks away and is like,
yeah.
Dummy.
What's fun? So like I want to mention a couple things. I love how you talk about how the casting of Hartnett himself tells its own story, and of course, like everyone has said this, but the way in which Nolan cast all these familiar actors in, so even down to like Jack Quaid being here or whatever helps us orient us so we don't get lost in the sea of millions of characters.
Such a smart idea.
It's really, really smart. Lawrence is so funny because growing up in the Bay Area, the Lawrence Hall of Science is like where you like you go and you see all the like it's this like place you go on a field trip. And so every time they say like Lawrence, I'm like, it's named after Ernest Lawrence. I was like, the Lawrence Hall of Science in the Bay Area. But like he's such a nobody, nothing, not accomplished character, but like is the name I knew better than anyone else.
You know, like he's almost probably a person who could sustain his own biopic, you know, given his own accomplishments, but he's sort of a necessary tool in Oppenheimer.
The other thing this movie does that I love is as we revisit scenes, the way in which like other characters are revealed to have been in the room, just the camera didn't show us earlier. You know, the big one is like when we move the flower arrangement, you're like, Dane DeHaan, what are you doing here? Like, whatever.
Jump scare.
But just sort of like turning around the table, you're like, oh, Lawrence was there in that scene or whatever. Or like the big one is like, oh, Strauss is, you know, like, et cetera. I'm going to give it to not a person, but just the concept of restless ambition. And that hits a number of people on the power front and on the pursuit of ideas, you know, Jurassic Park front. Okay. Are you watching closely? Most exquisitely gorgeous shot. I'm going to go first here and give it to, it's a superhero suiting up moment. And it's after Ravi Krumholtz's character says, they need us for who we are, so be yourself, only better. We see Oppenheimer take the military uniform off and put the hat on and pick up the pipe. And just like as the light is streaming in and he's standing in front of the window and the Göransson score is going crazy, like and then he walks out and in the screenplay,
he had that shit on.
He had that shit on. In the screenplay, which is told in the first person, it's an insane screenplay. It's great. I pull on a jacket, run a hand through newly shorn, close cropped dark hair, put on a pork pie hat, pick up my pipe, and then exterior Los Alamos under construction. Moments later, I walk the main drag like a sheriff, nodding at construction workers as I pass. The iconic J. Robert Oppenheimer. So this idea of like Nolan and the concept of costuming, which we've talked about since Following, like this is the thing of like sort of what does it mean for Guy Pearce to be wearing that suit in Memento? Or what does it mean for, of course, Batman to suit up or, all, you know, all of these various moments? And I think about Nolan himself. Sean is very responsibly like restraining himself from psychoanalyzing Christopher Nolan. I love to psychoanalyze Christopher Nolan. And like the fact that he has like created his own directorial uniform, you know? Did you see those photos recently of him in shorts at Universal Studios? He was like at Universal Studios in shorts.
Shame.
And I was just like, nothing.
Was he playing like a game, like a pipkup hoops game?
No, he was just out at the park and he was a man who was like, it's oppressively hot. I want to wear shorts. But I was like, where's the overcoat? I don't understand. Like, Christopher Nolan needs to be wearing an overcoat and a crisp white collared shirt. Like he has.
He wasn't
his
at
own uniform.
Work, right? If you're not at work, but at work, no shorts. No shorts at work.
This is
a long-standing fantasy rule.
Okay, all right.
But
in shorts.
But at play at City Walk.
Okay,
the guy loves City Walk.
He does. It's his own base.
He's always there. It's so hard to get in there.
Weird.
You think he has his own parking spot?
I don't think he has to go through security.
Yeah, he must have his own parking spot. Yeah.
Sean, what's your answer here?
I already mentioned it, which is that image of him being hoisted and the American flag positioned directly behind him, and you know the sort of like false promise of the future, and a lot of how the second half of the movie is really about destruction of lives and the soul.
Just that. I'll go with kind of an obvious one, but just the light wave star. Explosion, atmospheric ignition, collapsing star, black hole, gravity well, interstitials that we cut to throughout the entire film. Not only because, especially like the bending light, I'm not a physicist. I'm not a quantum mechanics scholar or physicist. Add to the list, but not only because they look cool, but because I think it also then further unlocks something that the movie does kind of amazingly well, which is actually inject a lot of quantum mechanics, physics, science without ever tripping you up on that at all. At all. They're talking about black holes. They're talking about splitting the atom. They're talking about this, the nuclei, this and that. Teller's running his calculations, uranium, plutonium, heavy water. Oh my God, they made a mistake. And you like don't need to understand any of that. You see the big fireball and you're like, got it.
You don't even need Mr. DNA to explain it.
Exactly. You don't. Yeah. No, always will.
They do have I can't remember, it's the uranium
the marbles.
Yeah. They do have these kind of visual signifiers of accomplishment, of sort of reaching a point that is also just like very simple, straightforward, but so simple and straightforward that most people wouldn't think to create storytelling that is able to communicate to you. Like, we've made progress, like especially in a movie with so much montage that you can kind of like stack the marbles over time. It's very, elegant little piece of storytelling.
It's marble stacking, and then suddenly Peter going from being a baby to like walking around, and then there's another baby, like little things like that help you inside of just the Los Alamos stretch. Because obviously we have Cillian Murphy looking quite different across time because we're covering many years, but
always handsome.
So just amazingly so. Those cheekbones.
I also love, to your point about that, I love learning that how much of that was done practically, like that in the behind the scenes you can see the lights that they were just sort of like moving in front of the camera in front of a shot of Cillian Murphy to give us some of those images. Okay. I can't remember to forget you the scene you think about the most, Sean Fennessey.
I think it's the Trinity test, right? I mean, it's the best scene in the movie. It's the most ecstatic piece of filmmaking I think he's probably ever made. It's an event. I was skewered on the internet when the trailer of this movie came out, and I was like, "We know this story. Why do we need this?" Very foolishly, and then loved the movie.
Did you know everything about straws, though?
No,
how much you learned?
And of course I didn't know everything about this story. Like, what the hell was I talking about?
You know what's fun about getting older is like sometimes it's really fun to be wrong. Yeah, it used to really embarrass me, and now I'm just sort of like, this is so human.
I feel the exact same way, specifically about this, where I was like, how nice that my own ego can be lapsed by my wonder and excitement about something, because it would have been the former when I was younger. But this one in particular, the whole point of a movie like this is not that you know the information, it's experiencing someone's perception of the information.
Yeah.
And the Trinity test is just bravura filmmaking and thrilling.
Yeah, it's incredible. That's my runner-up. I think, like you said earlier, there are kind of two contenders for this category. It's Trinity test or the post-bombing speech, and that's my pick. I think that sequence in the gym on the bleachers with the chanting and the stamping, and we've cut elsewhere to the feet pounding the bleachers, and we know the hold that moment has on him moving forward, in the super meeting later when we're cutting to it. But the way like we have the actual language of the speech that you already outlined, Joe, but then like, the flash of light and the ash falling from the sky, the way that the sound is just sucked out of the scene. So you see these screaming, cheering faces, but you don't hear them anymore. We're hearing like the heartbeat we're hearing. And then, of course, the cut to the face, the flaking skin on Christopher Nolan's own daughter's face.
But we're not going to psychoanalyze Christopher Nolan.
It's all right there. The stepping into the burnt body on the ground. And then amid the cheering and the celebration, the euphoria on this horrible moment and the guilt and shame, that basically is the final stretch of the Odyssey starting to creep into Oppenheimer right here on Oppenheimer's face in real time. And then you start to see, like, it's not everybody's cheering. Somebody's sobbing, somebody's vomiting. Like, there are people who realize what this means, and then we cut right from that scene to the time cover, the father of the atomic bomb. It's just really, really, really jaw-dropping. So that's my pick, but I did consider Trinity Test because I agree it's amazing.
Those are both perfect picks. For some reason, the moment that even when I was more critical of this film, and I am before I learned how to stop worrying and embrace it, is the meeting where it's decided where in Japan they'll drop the bomb.
Oh, yeah.
And James Remar, who comes back as Tiresias in the Odyssey, says, I've taken Kyoto off the list.
I honeymoon there.
And so just sort of the like absolutely poisonous, arbitrary nature of like, it's great cultural significance, and also I honeymooned there, so we won't kill everyone who lives there.
There's a fascinating real world resonance there too, which is that James Remar is married to a Japanese woman.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's just a fascinating choice.
Okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't speak English. If he does, it's with an accent thicker than sauerkraut sauce. Most baffling accent.
Easy pick.
Are you giving it to Brana?
For once I'm not. I think every time he's
it's been Brana every other time, but is it a Safdie brother then?
It is my guy Manny Safdie as Teller doing his best Hungarian here, I guess. Urge them to continue my research on the super is the line where I'm just like what's going on here? And I actually think his performance as Teller is great. There's the just the right, he's striking something really specific there. From the minute they want to keep him out, Oppenheimer's like keep him out and just barges right in. Everything tonally about the performance is great, but the accent is confounding to me.
I think that would be the go-to for most people. I do think Jason Clarke attempting like a semi New England prosecutor is like it's there's some moments that I noted that were a little strange.
And in a perfect emotional performance, Cillian Murphy is sometimes, and my girl Emily Blunt is sometimes.
Yeah, both are quite mannered.
From the UK. Yeah. All right. No one cared who I was until I put on the mask. Best use of a Nolan verse regular.
I'll go first. I mean, I would not have thought of Dust Malchin as a regular, but he's a very famous figure amongst horror movie fans and has appeared in a lot of horror movies over the years. And he's often used as like a goblin in movies, like a boogeyman.
Yeah.
And he's a real American boogeyman in this movie. He really is the person who is potentially going to fell one of our great minds. And I had just forgotten that he is so important. Is it in Dark Knight or Batman? Dark Knight, right?
Dark Knight.
As the Joker Allegiant dressed up in a police uniform.
That was his first sort of, I think maybe his first
big mainstream part. Was it
like
really?
That, maybe something like that.
So that's a very interesting little Nolan-esque callback. So I like that one. But he's great at this. Like he's got a huge troupe now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I do like that.
It's his first role.
That's kind of film.
Amazing.
Fun fact.
He's just got one of those faces.
I don't know. The pick is obviously Cillian Murphy. It's hard to make I can't really talk myself into making any other case, but I will say I really I admire the commitment to getting we're going to get Gary Oldman in here. We have to find a way. This cast has 1,000 people in it. And that scene in the Oval Office is so good, but also obviously the address and other moments. So
that's another outrageous accent in this movie. I mean, it's been fun for us to track. And as you know, my answer, as much as Brana has been in the accent category, my answer has often been Cillian Murphy because I'm such a huge Scarecrow, Jonathan Crane fan. I love the way in which Cillian Murphy, and we talked about this with Damon as well, this sort of showing up for small roles and being rewarded with the big, shiny center stage moment.
Dust Malchin starring role when?
Yeah,
that's my question.
JFK.
Yeah.
Are you going with Jefferson Hall here? Are you going Tylen Lannister?
I'm gonna go with Damon. I just love how Damon is used in this movie.
He's great.
I just think he's so, and the way he looks in this movie, the mustache, and also just what you learn about Groves in terms of the performance he's putting on. And then Oppenheimer's I looked into you.
Yeah, he went and studied engineering at MIT.
This is weird. So, the performance inside of the performance inside of the performance of Matt Damon. And also just, the meta nature of Casey Affleck also being here is just quite fun, I think. All right. Amateurs seek the sun, get eaten, power stays in the shadows. Said by one Mr. Straws. Stealth MVP of this movie that not enough people talk about.
Difficult movie for this category, given how many aspects of this movie have been
lauded.
Literally awarded with an Oscar, but also celebrated in many forms. I'm going with the size of the cast, specifically the commitment to incorporating the volume of scientists who the film finds some way to name or give one line to. I tend to forget when I come back and I watch this movie and I'm like, yeah, Jack Quaid's in this movie.
Josh Peck is here.
Yeah. Which Wolf brother is that? Josh Peck is here is a great one, is that guy from CW show The 100? It is, they're all here. And the thing that I think it achieves is just giving you a real sense of how many, despite this movie being so fully about Oppenheimer, as we've talked about, how many people had to contribute to this and participated in this. It's the film's version of that Groves Oppenheimer exchange where it's hard to put a price tag on it. It's not really, just add up all the bills, hard to give you a sense of how many people were involved in the Manhattan Project. It's not really. Put 400 of them in this movie, So I think it achieves something that is necessary to balance out centering so much of this on Oppenheimer himself.
Sean Fennessey.
I didn't know you could do that. You could answer questions by saying the totality of something.
Pick anything you want. You do anything you want with these categories.
That's cheating.
You can also just be the editing. the cinematography. You can do anything you want.
I didn't think about it.
I am doing the editing.
That was what I had first.
Like,
but like,
you know,
she won an
Oscar.
Yeah.
I know.
So
but like, people don't say her name enough, I think. So
she's wonderful. I interviewed her for this film, and is just like the most normal, down to earth person. And this I think editing Christopher Nolan's movies, they sound like hell to me.
Probably challenging.
And this one in particular is just. The tonnage
it's insane.
And you talked about it with the size of the cast. I mean, there's just so many speaking parts, and there's so many intersecting and interweaving plot lines and film stock styles, and the music and the way that it has to kind of match perfectly with so many of the images that are created. And so I think that's a great pick. I mean, I was just going to pick David Krumholtz because I just think he's the heart and soul of the movie. And
I was gonna pick Krumholtz, but my memory, and I think it's just because I'm in like a certain, or at 3 years ago was in a certain corner of Twitter. Like, my memory was like so many people were like, Krumholtz should have won the Oscar, like, instead of Downey.
I was one of those people.
Krumholtz should have won for like.
And it's one of those things where it is kind of a little microcosmic snapshot of how the Academy Awards work, where like there was never a moment, not even a second, where David Krumholtz was even going to be nominated. That was not on the table because this is a very mechanized system where when this movie came out, it was very clear that Downey was going to run and that he was going to have his moment. And if it wasn't going to be Downey, or if there were going to be 2 nominations, the other one probably would have been Matt Damon. And then you go down the list and like maybe Krumholtz is 3rd or 4th. But, I think it's kind of important over time to continue to give performers their laurels, even if they're not recognized by the Academy. And it's very common for bigger stars to get their awards in supporting categories when they've been overlooked. But Downey should have won for like Chaplin like 35 years ago. You know what I mean? It's one of those things where like, why did that not happen then? I don't know.
Do you think he'll win again for playing Victor Von Doom?
I don't, but you know what? Who knows?
If Downey had won for The Judge, which is what he wanted to have happened 1 year.
Yeah.
Or what if he had won for that documentary he made about his dad?
Oh.
Yeah, Senior.
That he was really like there were these like he's running years. And then it was like he's running and he has a path to it. But like we were talking about this with like this year as we talk about Anne Hathaway versus Samantha Morton. Like, is this a moment?
It's the exact same race.
Yeah.
The exact same race.
Is Anne Hathaway getting her second Oscar? And when she came out on stage at D23, I was just like, Jesus Christ. She's
brought down the house.
Until, the entire stadium erupted for
like
her.
7 months pregnant?
Until she drops that baby. Like, she is going to be on every single stage.
That's all about whether she picks supporting or lead, or whether whatever they pick.
We were discussing that, but and my question was like, what if the critical groups start, because in supporting, I really feel like those critical. Sorry, I could always talk about the Oscars, but like those critical group awards, when they start gathering steam behind like a Patricia Arquette or something like that, like it can go. So like if Samantha Morton starts winning those, the narrative could change. And if Krumholtz had like started winning those critical group, like
it's possible, like Regina King and Beale Street, like that kind of a thing. Like those things do happen.
It's part of why Amy Madigan was able to like, make it all that way.
That was one for sure.
That's like the one path. If Samantha Morton like starts cropping up in those, that's the one path she could have. Otherwise it's, and to your point, category.
For the record, I like Downey in the movie. I think it's very overstated, his performance, because I think he doesn't really know how to act anymore. But it's not, I find it's appropriate for the movie because he is written as a villainous type. So
I like him in the scenes with Oppenheimer. Like I think those scenes are really good. It might be more of a writing issue, but to your point, like I think he should have won for Chaplin or a number of other things that he has done in the past that I'm delighted he has an Oscar. Okay. You're waiting on a train that will take you far away. Best dead girl moment. We just had to do it. We had to do it. It's one of my favorite categories. Cillian Murphy being fucked by the ghost of Florence Pugh inside of a hearing.
It's got to be either that, or as we already talked about, Oppie flashing to the hair in the bathtub as Roger Robb is just berating him about whether he would have used the H-bomb. It's like consequences of my action. Dead girl moment.
I'm with you on both of them. Those seem appropriate.
That seems right. Or putting his daughter.
This has been just, or
that. Melting off of his daughter, something like that.
I
just a classic category.
That's a good one as well.
It's just something he loves to do. And we were like, it's not going to happen in the Odyssey. And then it did. Okay. They won't fear it until they understand it, and they won't understand it until they've used it. Clear as great man moment. We've already talked about a lot of this. when Sean raised this earlier, but anything you want to
I'll just
here?
rapid fire read a couple emblematic quotes to kind of put a bow on the discussion we've had all pod. Lawrence, because you're not just self-important, you're actually important. Chevalier, you see beyond the world we live in. There's a price to be paid for that. Right. Izzy, when you speak, they hear a prophet. Oh my God. Incredible. Oppenheimer himself. Our work here will ensure a peace mankind has never seen. Sillard, you're the great salesman of science. Yeah. Oppenheimer himself calling it divine power. And then Strauss with, great envy and jealousy saying because it made him the most important man who ever lived.
Robert built that damn place. He was founder, mayor, sheriff, all rolled into one.
Yeah. I really like the scene when he comes to teach and Lomanitz is his first student and only student in the class, and he immediately starts lecturing, and you can kind of see Oppenheimer's mind come alive. And, it's paradoxical, and yet it works. Like that scene, too, where it's sort of like, this guy's smart, and he's smarter than everybody else, and he's going to tell you why he's so smart as a sort of like lead up to a lot of the moments that you guys are describing.
I love that. Sean, an idea is like a virus, resilient, highly contagious. The line that hits hardest 3 years later.
Maybe it is. It's paradoxical and yet it works. Which is like I think the best defense of this movie that I could make, which is like something that is as overstated in the third act as it possibly is, should kind of pull this thing down from within inside it. But I still like it. Like it still turns me on.
Fusion and fission, baby.
That's right.
I'm tempted to go with Bohr's algebra's like sheet music. The important thing isn't can you read music, it's can you hear it. Can you hear the music, Robert? But it's been a category title for us, so that makes me feel like it's disqualified because we've mentioned it now 13 times already on other podcasts.
But whenever I hear that line in the movie, I feel the Göransson score.
Oh my God, I know. It does
which I think is called Can You Hear the Music?
It gives you a chill watching it. So instead, I will go with my guy Teller and his flawless pitch perfect accent. J. Robert Oppenheimer, Sphinx-like guru of the atom.
Yes.
Nobody knows what you believe, do you? Because I think nobody knows what you believe, do you is actually quite effective and pointed
incisive,
in a good way. What about you, Joe?
Our guy Chevalier, you see beyond the world we live in, there's a price to be paid for that. When Oppenheimer is talking to, I can't remember his name, the scientist who he calls a fellow traveler, where he's like, they need us. And he's like, until they don't. Right. Yes, so this idea of like going in tandem with the great man idea is a sort of like, they will worship you and they will build you up and they will be equally excited to tear you down.
Yes.
Like that is part and parcel of the whole narrative.
Yeah. I love that.
You think darkness is your ally, but you really adopt the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. Most devastating moment.
This was one of the easier categories for me. It's kind of obvious, but I do just think the end. Like the Einstein, Oppenheimer scene, Albert, when I came to you with those calculations, we thought we might start a chain reaction that would destroy the entire world. I remember, well, what of it? I believe we did. And then the meme face, and then the atmospheric ignition. It's like, that's a good ending to a movie. It is. And so I'm like, the 30-ish minutes that preceded, I'm like, and then at the end, I'm just like, Godfather 3 pulled me back in. It really hits hard. Yeah.
That was also my answer.
That's a great answer. I'll go with it. Can you hear the music, Robert? Most unforgettable Göranssonism. Zimmerism really works better than Göranssonism.
Ludwigism?
Ludwigism. I saw him at Tartine across the street the other day.
Here?
Yeah. Our Tartine.
Sheesh.
Sorry, not to call out Ludwig.
Also interviewed him for this film. Lovely man.
Genius.
Yeah, he's great.
You're the best, Sean.
Well, I did.
Two of the greats.
Can you hear the music is my answer. This is you referenced this montage earlier. It's when it's not just science, but it's also modernist art. And it's also, he's reading The Wasteland.
Yes.
It's just like all of the cultural moments that go into the ideas that are sparking and coming alive.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a very haughty thing that if not done well could seem so pretentious.
But I love haughty.
I do too. I mean, I wish more artists would aspire to these things. That like the intersection between art and science is real, and that form breakers, no matter what the medium, inspire people. And obviously, Oppenheimer is very inspired by, or Nolan is very inspired by Oppenheimer in some ways, and he's very inspired by these great artists and figures who, a man staring at a Picasso and realizing it doesn't have to be perceptionally exactly what you think it is a little much, but I do like it. Like it did hit me. I felt very forgiving of it despite its obviousness.
I liked it a lot.
I'm going with the final prep stretch before the Trinity test, and this has actually been my pick for the Can You Hear the Music category in a lot of movies, the Zimmer ones. Like when the score functions in a Nolan movie like a clock. You know, the ticking, you can feel the ticking of it, the anxiety, the way that it heightens that feeling in your chest and in your gut. This is really like an astonishing example of that. The way that there's like a almost Geiger meter, like sound effect incorporated because of the fear and the terror. The incorporation too, the pairing with the score of the natural elements, like the thunder, the rolling in of the thunder and the clouds, the flapping of the sheets, you know, priming us for the bring the sheets in music. And then I'm like, is that a fiddle? Maybe it's not. I don't know. But just even the choice of instruments is very effective and surprising. It's amazing.
Something that Göransson said about sort of which instruments he chose is that they wanted to make, you know, and I love when they talked about this with the Odyssey, but for this, that they wanted to make almost like Peter and the Wolf style, that the violin is the sound of Oppenheimer because it can go from beautifully melodic to like horror movie screeching.
Yes.
And sort of like, so it can just like, you know, be both this like act of creation and then just this act of horror at the same time. Sean Fennessey, anything you want to add here?
No, I think it's that first sequence. It's not the first sequence. It's the sort of like after he's been challenged by Niels Bohr. And he goes into this like state of intellectualizing about fission and fusion that I think is probably the score moment that resonates the most for me.
2 more to go, and then we're done with the Nolan rewatch. How sad. Okay, for me, I think this is the end of a beautiful friendship. Actor who has yet to return to the Nolan verse, but should. This was much more fun when we were doing like way earlier. Basically, these are actors who have not been in the Odyssey.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm going to give it to Krumholtz, who I said Krumholtz, who has quit acting, but I guess has since walked that back. But Krumholtz should be in everything, and would I put Krumholtz in the Odyssey? Sure.
Yeah, why
like
not?
Wazamo, I love you, but Krumholtz as Eumaeus?
He's wonderful.
That would be fun. I don't know.
Be great.
I think Nolan needs to try to write a movie told directly from the perspective of a woman. Yeah. And I think with Florence Pugh, it would be interesting.
This is my pick as well. Let's get Pugh back. Let's get Pugh back in a Nolan movie.
You don't think if he finally makes a movie from the point of view of a woman,
it's definitely going to be Anne Hathaway.
Got to be Hannah Hathaway. Like, she's put in her time.
I know.
It's her time.
Yeah, I just think...
There's going to be a second woman in that movie. That would be shocking. Maybe it can be
would they talk to each other?
No, never. No. Never be in the same room.
Would they talk to each other about anything other than a man?
Not only can they not be in the same room, they can't be in the same time.
And they will both die, so don't worry about it.
I feel like Florence Pugh is one of the very few like under 35 female movie stars in America and has had kind of a weird 5 years where I don't really, no shots of Thunderbolts, which I like, but
fuck off. This is Yelena Belova HQ right here.
I get it. And I like her, and I liked her in Spider-Man a lot. But like, there's more there.
I've watched a bit of East of Eden.
It was good. Oh, okay.
Like what she's doing.
That's TV. It's a TV show.
Yeah, but come on.
She's a movie star. Why did she make a TV show?
Unbelievable.
Come on.
Unbelievable.
Come on.
She's supposed to be like our Barbara Stanwyck, man. Like she's like brassy and tough and smart and sexy
awesome.
And like a very classic movie star type that I love. And I think she brings, again, a lot of gravitas to a weird part. And like Jean is written very strangely in this movie. The stuff she has to do while wearing no clothes would be questionable, I think, with most actresses. And she, I think, makes what is very unbelievable on the page, I think, work in the film. And so I'd like to see her get a little more to do.
Same.
I look forward to you walking back your besmirching of East of Eden when you're like, I finally watched Andor, and guess what? It was a masterpiece. Finally watched East of Eden.
I mean, two of the formative voices in my life, right? Right. Is it East of Eden is Steinbeck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and George Lucas? Yeah. Sure. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Tony Gilroy and Zoe Kazan, like,
yeah, I love Zoe Kazan.
I know you do. All right, Mallory.
Pew as well.
Pew. All right. Some men just want to watch the world burn. The most Nolan thing about this movie.
I don't have anything to add beyond what we've already covered today. I mean, it's a astonishingly edited, filmed, scored, practically effects enhanced, non-linear exploration of a great man confronting his impact and legacy on the world. And it's, I guess maybe one thing worth talking about, given that this and Odyssey were back to back, is just like Nolan's era of adapting history or historical works versus like original storytelling. That's interesting. Do you think he'll stay in that stretch for a while or go back to like the Tenet?
Well, if we get our JFK, yeah, JFK told from this perspective of Jackie as played by Anne Hathaway.
I'm in.
I'm interested.
You have my attention.
I have seen the film Jackie, starring Natalie Portman.
I love that movie. Actually.
Yeah, I do too. Very interesting movie. What he does next is fascinating to me. Yeah. He's hinting around at making a horror movie, which I think would be a lot of fun based on what we saw in the Odyssey.
Yeah, the Odyssey is a horror movie.
Yeah.
In terms of like those germs of the next movie being in the movie.
It'd be really great though if he was just like, I'm rebooting Nightmare on Elm Street. Like he's obviously not going to do that. I think this is kind of the summation of the style, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that I bumped on in previous films, I felt more forgiving of in this movie. I think maybe because stylistically and narratively, it felt like a step forward, and also it's a true story, and doesn't seem to take very many liberties with the truth in a way that a lot of movies like this go under the microscope. So
yeah.
When you, Sean Fennessey, if there's a storyteller that hasn't worked for you and then they do something that hits for you, and you're like, you know what, Nolan movies aren't really for me, and then you
watch Tenet
and
you're transformed.
But that's a misnomer about my relationship to Christopher Nolan. And I've been saying this like 1,000 times, but I was all in on Memento. I saw Insomnia in theaters. I liked it. I really liked The Prestige. And I always said that. To me, the bump was where most people were like, wow, Dark Knight, Inception, that's like the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I was 14 when those movies came out. And I understand that perspective. I have my movies like that as well. But Inception in particular was a movie that just didn't really... Labyrinth, yeah. I mean, it happens.
Well, my question was, and this is not about changing your score of Inception. But
I'm trying to think of who's a director who like made 5 movies that I didn't like, and then their 6th movie I did like.
You don't have an answer for that. I mean, I guess my
it's usually the opposite. It's like Zack Snyder. Like I really was interested in the first couple of Zack Snyder movies, and he really went off the rails.
Yeah,
I think I find here's what I'll say, that like, I guess the entire body of Nolan's work just enhances all the previous films for me, and this rewatch project has, and so just sort of like being able to think of it as one large story, and so when you have a stretch of Nolan that you appreciate, and then he sort of like goes off the rails for you commercially, whatever it is, and then he like comes back around to a sort of haughty intellectual space that you love to exist in, does it like reflect a shine back on some of these other films where you're like, that didn't really work for me, but I see how these ideas have been percolating inside of them, and you need them to get here.
I don't know. I mean, it's been I rewatched Inception and Interstellar during COVID. Just in a real, like, I'm having a family, I'm buying a home, like having this kind of like, maybe I should revisit some of my strongly held opinions. And in both cases, I kind of landed with those movies where I had always been, which is like some things about it, don't like some things about it. The things I don't like about it, I find it very hard to certify loving the movie. And I love a lot of movies. It's not that uncommon for me to love a movie. And I want to love most movies. And I don't think either of those movies are cynical at all. I just think they're a little immature. And I don't think that his most recent run of movies are immature. Tenet is like a big experiment. It might be the most immature movie he's ever made, but it's such a fun experiment that I can't help getting caught up in it.
We love a swing.
We love a swing. These last two, though, they're movies I'll say made by a man in the second half of his life, who's no longer aspirational and more just trying to use the powers and skills and tools that he's figured out how to work with, and to try to make something a little bit bigger and, like, dare I say, like, more lasting and meaningful.
Right. Whereas James Cameron took the same opportunity to be like, what if hot cat blue alien people fucked?
Well, yes and no, but I mean, I'm more forgiving of those movies too, because he's like, we are living amidst an ecological disaster, and I'll make a parable for our times about this disaster and about the military-industrial complex, which I had previously valorized, uncomplicatedly in the past.
Sean, don't make me reconsider Avatar. I can't do it.
You can still hate it.
You got really close right there. That was impressive.
I don't. It's the same thing where, like, I think a lot of these guys, when they start thinking about their legacies, they sometimes take swings that are very self-serious.
Yes.
And that can really backfire. Nolan is the case for me where it's really working. He's like, what is my life all about?
Yeah.
And how can I see it through these people? To me is more interesting than I've made a third Batman film.
Sure. But that had Bane in it.
I know.
You guys remember Bane?
I get it. I like Bane.
Bane rules.
I'm going to end by returning to this again.
You don't want the last words of the
Bane rules
15-month project to be Bane rules.
Guess what? You can end on that. We'll come back to it.
Something to think about.
Ciara incepted this idea of like trying to go home, right? And I've been sort of thinking about it, and so thinking about it as it returns to like how it pertains to Oppenheimer and the Odyssey of like not just trying to go, you can't go home again. So this idea that Robert Oppenheimer took his idea of heaven, which was New Mexico, this like very nostalgic place, and made hell of his heaven, like turned it into an inferno, and then made, in the same way that Odysseus is like, I broke the world. I can't go home again. I'm trying to go home. I don't really want to go home because I've forever changed our society and I can't go home again. So like these last two really being the You Can't Go Home Again movies. I think that's incredibly interesting. So I really like that.
That's a beautiful observation. And I love the way that...
But also Bane rules,
Also Bane rules. It's something to think about. Your body. Robbie, our guy, he voices that in a way that inside of this question of like, what have you wrought in the world? Like also what has the impact been on your own circumstance and the thing you cherish? When Robbie's like, you drop a bomb and it falls on the just and the unjust. I don't wish the culmination of 3 centuries of physics to be a weapon of mass destruction. Like, what are you doing inside of your own life too? And what is the cost of that? I don't know. There's something I think quite honest about that maybe has more of a hold on people. We wouldn't like to think it, but that probably has more of a hold on people than what is the cost of the thing that you did to the world. And Bane rules.
Sean Fennessey rules.
You guys rule.
Sean, thanks so much for doing
this. What a project. What a podcast.
Thanks for joining us, bud. When will you come back? Will you come back to talk next year about Oswald with us?
Well, sure.
Yeah. I didn't bring my Oswald trading cards for Sean.
I'm sorry. Did they show a trailer for that series?
Yeah, a cute little clip.
Footage, and they gave us trading cards.
They're commemorative from that night only, and Joanna got one and was like, I'm going to give it to a stranger.
Did Favreau speak of The Mandalorian and Grogu? Did it come up?
Didn't come up.
He did come out and he said, This is a really personal project. Then Mallory went, aren't they all, John? And it was the funniest moment of D23 for me. It was really good. Thank you to Sean Fennessey.
Thank
you to our team of scientists, Carlos Chiriboga, Scott Lee, Jacob Cornett, Arjuna Ramgopowell, Jomi Adeniran, all played by Oscar-winning actors like Rami Malek and Casey Affleck and the rest. Gary Oldman.
Thanks to Christopher Nolan for making great movies for a couple decades.
Thank you, Christopher Nolan. I've always been saying that.
Yeah. What a treat.
Always been on the right side of history. And we will be back with Lanterns episode 3 on Monday. See you soon. Bye.
Bane rules.